And from Stamford Bridge, we take you to Bahrain for the Bahrain Grand Prix. And it is live right now with Harry Benjamin. Hello, Harry, how are you?
Hello, Chris. All well, thank you very much for that. Welcome along, everyone, to live coverage of round 4 of the 2025 Formula One World Championship. We're back on known territory for this one at the Bahrain International Circuit, a circuit that's been on the calendar since 2004 and in recent times played host to pre-season testing. It's one that they all know. Leading the championship into this round is Lando Norris. By 1 point separates him and Max Verstappen, and McLaren lead the Constructors' Championship. But it's Oscar Piastri who has the best view in the house on pole position. One of the McLarens is out of position. We've got a couple of low players up in the big spots trying to make their mark. It's time for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri, who takes McLaren's first pole in Bahrain under the lights. He'll have the best view in the house. Alongside him, Charles Leclerc's Ferrari after a one-place grid penalty for George Russell. He starts in third, ahead of a remarkable result for Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. He starts fourth, ahead of Kimi Antonelli, also given a one-place grid penalty in his Mercedes. Lando Norris rued his qualifying. He starts sixth, ahead of a struggling Max Verstappen in the Red Bull from seventh. Carlos Sainz is eighth in the Williams, ahead of Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari, and Yuki Tsunoda makes it 2 Red Bulls in the top 10. Jack Doohan just missed out in the Alpine. He starts 11th, ahead of the French rookie Isaac Hadjar for Racing Bulls, ahead of Fernando Alonso, who goes from 13th. Esteban Ocon 14th in the Haas. Alex Albon in the Williams rounds out the top 15. Nico Hülkenberg from 16th, ahead of Lawson, Bortoleto, Stroll, and Ollie Behrman 20th and last. Well, situated in the middle of the desert, about a half-an-hour drive south, if the traffic's good, from the capital, Manama, lies this 5.4-kilometre track, a circuit that has been on the grid since 2004 and turned into a night race back in 2014. And guiding you through every twist and turn under the lights is myself, Harry Benjamin. Alongside me is the former McLaren mechanic, Mark Priestley. Keeping us on the straight and narrow too is the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. And Mark, we're already on the formation lap. It's coming at us thick and fast. It is Oscar Piastri with the advantage, but there's a lot of storylines to play out over the course of 57 laps.
Yeah, so much to look forward to. Everything that you thought was dull a week ago in Suzuka, it should be the opposite here. And a track where you can overtake. We've got a mixture of the grid, cars out of position. Everything's set up for a great afternoon.
It certainly is, as they weave left and right, getting heat into their tyres. Lando Norris will need to make good traction off of his grid spot down into turn 1, which is a right-hander, which immediately feeds you into a left-hand flick, followed by a right-hand, and then all the way to a golden overtaking opportunity of the right-hander of turn 4. Of course, Mark, the majority of the field starting on the soft tyre, the softest of the rubber.
Yeah, because it's going to give you a great launch, but what it will mean is a very, very early pit stop. The alternate strategy only being carried out by Ferrari inside the top 10. They're starting on the medium tyre and will be able to go much longer into this race before the first of what we think will be 2 pit stops.
Oscar Piastri already peeling into his grid box as they do their final burnouts to get themselves into their starting positions. Those going on the alternate strategy, starting on the medium tyre. Charles Leclerc along with his teammate Lewis Hamilton, so too Fernando Alonso. The lights are on and the 20 cars are starting to peel into their grid spots. Alongside me is the McLaren mechanic, Mark Priestley, as it's Oscar Piastri in the McLaren who lines up on pole position. Alongside him is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, but don't rule out George Russell either in the Mercedes, who has been looking quick all weekend long. Could he spring a surprise? Lando Norris has to make up ground from 6th place. So too for Max Verstappen, who's been struggling in that Red Bull. He starts in a lowly 7th place. We're almost ready for the lights to come on the pit gantry overlooking the start-finish straight, which is a run down to turn 1 into the right-hander. As the last place car lines up, it is all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing in Bahrain. And it's a good start from Oscar Piastri, who holds the lead. George Russell with a better start than Charles Leclerc, who pushes him to the inside, but Leclerc the grid, up into third.
It's a blistering start from Lando Norris, exactly what he and the McLaren team needed. That gamble to start on the medium tyre, we said it would be slow off the line, and that's exactly how it played out, with Charles Leclerc and the Ferrari losing out positions 2 slots further back already. His teammate also not making up ground off the start, so this is exactly where McLaren needed to be as they get halfway round lap 1.
Into the tight left-hander of turn number 10 as they now accelerate down the short straight that leads you to the sweeping left-hander of 11. Then the fastest corner on the circuit, the right-hander of turn 12. The 2 Red Bulls have lost position, certainly for Max Verstappen. He's fallen down to 8th, just ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Yuki Tsunoda rounds out the top 10. But as we're edging towards the final corner of lap 1 of 57 of the Bahrain Grand Prix, we have got fights all the way up and down the field. The 2 Racing Bulls further back swapping positions. Isaac Hadjar has lost a huge amount of ground. He's down to 16th, but at the end of lap 1, it's Oscar Piastri who leads by nearly a second ahead of George Russell, with Lando Norris up to 3rd. The sparks fly from the underside of these Formula 1 cars, embarking on lap number 2. Yuki Tsunoda trying to have a little look down the inside of Lewis Hamilton into turn 1, can't make it work. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon with a bit of a lock-up, and he tries to get the move done on Fernando Alonso for 12th place. It's Piastri, Russell, Norris the top 3, Leclerc, Gasly the top 5, then comes Sainz up to 6th. Antonelli's lost positions, he's down to 7th ahead of Verstappen, Hamilton and Tsunoda the top 10.
And from 6th on the grid, Lando Norris is now 3rd and has a chance to win this race, Harry. His race pace has been every bit as quick as Oscar Piastri's. He struggles when the car is absolutely on the limit in qualifying, but there's no reason to think he can't be at least as quick as Piastri in the race. Can he get past George Russell and make it in McLaren 1-2 and contest for that victory?
Let's see what happens, but that was a bit of a frenetic start. The big losers at the end of that, Mark. Well, Charles Leclerc's down to 4th, Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes losing positions as well, along with the man you're listening to now, Max Verstappen. He's lost 1 position, he's down to 8th.
Yeah, not the start that Verstappen needed if he was going to have any hope of making a real dent at the front end of this race. But for Leclerc in the Ferrari, the one thing we can say is that he's playing a slightly different game to everyone else right now. Yes, he lost positions off the start line because he didn't have the grip on the soft tyre that everyone else had around him. He had a medium tyre, slightly harder, but it will give you more longevity. It will run for longer in this race. So he's going to be on a different pit stop strategy to those around him. So at some point, probably around about lap 9 or 10, you're going to start to see the first cars peeling in for their pit stops, and that will allow Leclerc a free air run from at the front of this Grand Prix to try and make up some ground on that tyre that will run longer.
Ferrari running a new floor this weekend, an upgrade they've rushed through, and Leclerc seemingly happy with it for the time being, able to get more out of that Ferrari than Lewis Hamilton is at the moment. He's still languishing down where he started in 9th. Tsunoda the top 10, then it's Doohan, Ocon up to 12th ahead of Albon, then Alonso 14th. Behrman's had a great start from 20th and last all the way up to 15th ahead of the 2 Racing Bulls. Nightmare for those 2 drivers, 16th and 17th. Stroll is 18th with the 2 Sauber drivers. Bortoletto ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, who's also equally had a bad start, down to 20th behind his teammate. This is the sound of Lando Norris making his way into the left-hander of turn 10 where the apex creeps up on you. Try not to lock a wheel, easy on the throttle as you come out of the corner, up to 5th gear already by the time he hits the DRS, the drag reduction system. If you're within a second of the car in front, it closes under braking just after the 50-metre braking board into the left-hander, uphill, sweeping through the left, then sweeping through the right. Norris trying to gain on George Russell's Mercedes. Russell is in 2nd. He's 1.3 seconds behind Oscar Piastri.
And I can tell you, a note has just popped up from race control that Lando Norris is being investigated for being out of position at the Grand Prix start. We haven't really seen it because we haven't seen a replay of the start yet, so we'll keep a close eye on it. But normally if that gets noted, it's pretty much a slam dunk. So we saw him get a wonderful start and make up places, but was he assisted by being slightly out of position?
So what, time penalty, drive through, loss in the pit lane, any one of those?
I suspect it would probably be a drive-through penalty, but yeah, we'll see. There are a number of penalties open to him, and it will depend on exactly what the offence was, how much of an offence it was in terms of where he was or how far out of his box he was. But it's very rare that those sort of things get sent to race control, to the stewards, and noted and not acted upon.
This is the sound of Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, who has lost a position from where he started. He's down to 5th, holding his own for the time being. He's got Carlos Sainz behind him in the Williams. Sainz making moves up from 8th. So those are the two outliers at the moment, really making their mark in the top 8 and trying to hold on for a good result. Carlos Sainz hasn't been able to get the better of his teammates so far this year.
Grip is quite poor this time. Understood.
That's Lewis Hamilton saying grip is quite poor on this tyre. He's on the medium tyre, so going longer into this race than his nearest rivals. And he's currently down in 9th, which is where he started this race. We're on lap 4 of 57 of the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Yeah, so Piastri doing exactly what he needed to do in terms of getting away well at the start of the race, breaking the DRS gap to George Russell. He's about 1.5 seconds in front, so no DRS for Russell. But Russell doing a really solid job. Over the course of this weekend, it's been Russell who's generally been the best of the rest behind the two McLarens. And I was actually re-watching the qualifying lap that George Russell put in yesterday. He was almost a match for Piastri for large parts of the lap, and it was only really in the third and final sector that Piastri really pulled away and made the big difference. So George Russell has a car underneath him that's very, very capable, and we suspect as the temperature drops, which it will do between now and the end of this race as we move further into night, McLaren's advantage, which often is in the higher temperatures that we've seen at other points of this weekend, will start to just deteriorate a little bit as well. So George Russell not completely out of this race.
Kimi Antonelli down the inside and forcing the move on Carlos Sainz, the Mercedes driver, now up to 6th as we hurtle towards the right-hander of turn 4, and Max Verstappen would like a piece of the action, please. They go side by side, just the Williams and the Red Bull. Verstappen keeps his foot in it, and as the track tightens up through the right-hand sweeper, then the left-hand downhill towards turn 8, it's Max Verstappen who wins out on that one. Antonelli 6th, Verstappen 7th.
Well, he doesn't leave me a car's width.
It was tight. That was Max Verstappen saying he wasn't left a car's width when fighting on the exit of turn 4 against Carlos Sainz. That's the right-hander, and what leads you out there is a bit of gravel, which he certainly was met with a face with. As we're getting another look at the start, worth remembering Lando Norris has been noted for being out of position in his grid spot.
Yeah, it looked to me from the overhead shot, Harry, as if his front wheels were a little bit forward of the line. If that's the case, it really looked like they were. He's going to get a false start for that. I don't know what it's going to be, 5 second, 10-second penalty. I would guess a drive-through is a really severe penalty. I wouldn't have thought it'd be that, but let's see. But I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get something now, because it looked like a slam dunk.
They don't tend to give drive-throughs anymore, really. I've not seen one in a long time, but that's what we've garnered from the overhead shot at least. We're getting another look and hearing Verstappen's radio.
It's over his grid box.
Lando is over his grid box. Max Verstappen is commenting on that, and actually we've just seen a better view of it. He was, Mark, 2 wheels.
He was. When you look at the grid slots that are on the track, they have an extended yellow line out toward the side of each of the grid slots, and that's so that the driver can see where to position their front wheel, because they can't actually see the contact patch of their wheel from the cockpit. So they extend the yellow line out. That gives them a reference point, and Lando was very clearly, I mean, it's an absolute slam dunk. He was very clearly beyond that yellow line, even beyond the front of his own box, which is another foot or so ahead of the yellow line. So that is almost certainly going to be a penalty. It has now been moved from just being noted by the stewards to a full investigation. The next step, I suspect, will be the penalty.
Max Verstappen hot on the radio to comment on that one. Lewis Hamilton had a poor exit out of turn 2. That's how he got done by Max Verstappen, coming back through to regain a position. It wasn't the best start for Verstappen. We're just getting all the replays coming through at the start as well. It's still Piastri who leads Russell and Lando Norris in 3rd. Ollie Behrman managed to keep it neat and tidy in the Haas. Was really disappointed with qualifying yesterday. Hasn't felt confident around this circuit so far. Started 20th, and the British driver is now up into 14th. His teammate is only a couple of spots ahead of him in 12th. And while we were talking, we had a fantastic move late on the brakes with the aid of DRS for the Italian rookie in the Mercedes. That was a blinder of a move, Mark, from Kimi Antonelli on Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, it really was. That's a sign of a confident driver, and a driver who's confident in the capabilities of his own car. To be late and lunging on the brakes like that, you've got to be very confident that you know it's going to come to a stop, slow the car down and get through the corner. He knew all of that, and he absolutely put it into practice, so that was really solid.
Do you think Carlos Sainz gave Max Verstappen enough of a car's width when they were fighting?
It's one of those that Probably not, but the reality is, and it is the first pit stop, by the way, from Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. You're going to see a flurry of those in a minute, actually, because we are coming towards the point where lap 7, probably from here on in, is where these soft tyres really start to wear away and overheat and start to thermally degrade and lose the performance. The problem everyone's got, by the way, with that is that the field is still bunched up. There's not enough gaps for the front runners to drop into. They need people like Hadjar and others from the midfield to start making their stops to create the gaps that the front runners can then drop into.
Leclerc struggling a lot with the medium.
Understood. That's Pierre Gasly saying Leclerc, who is the car ahead of him, is struggling a lot on the medium tyre. Gasly is behind on the soft tyre, running in 5th.
Now, it's interesting to hear that because there's a split in the tyre choices of the top teams. Red Bull have gone for the medium tyre, 2 sets of the mediums and 1 set of the hards, whereas McLaren have gone, and Ferrari have gone the other way. They've got 2 sets of the hards and 1 set of the medium. Is it the other way around? I'm sure. So McLaren got 2 sets of mediums. So apologies for that, everybody. So that's bad news for McLaren if the medium's not working out.
Well, let's see how Leclerc goes, monitoring his progress, and so will all of the other teams, looking to see how that medium tyre is holding up. We have had some first pit stops from those further back. Isaac Hadjar came in to get rid of his soft into a medium, so too for Nico Hülkenberg. And the news is in for Lando Norris, a 5-second time penalty for a false start, being out of position as he tries to put pressure on George Russell in the Mercedes ahead of him for 2nd place. He will now have 5 seconds to serve, and he will have to do that, Mark, at his first pit stop.
Yeah, he will, which is the last thing they needed, because when I was just talking a moment ago about finding a gap to drop into, here he is in the radio.
So, Lando, we've been given a 5-second penalty for out of position on the grid. If we can get past Russell, we need to try. We will recover these positions.
Well, there's some confidence on the radio there from the team, and they should have confidence because they've got a very, very fast car. We can see a replay of what happened. Lando actually rolled forward, so he got into the correct position. He lined his car up perfectly while they were all waiting on the grid, and then before the lights went into their sequence, he let his foot off the brake. The car rolled forward, and it was only once it had gone about a foot or more that he then realised, stopped the car, and then they got into the start sequence. So that feels like just pure carelessness at least from the outside from Lando Norris. What I was just going to say was when it comes to the gaps, they're looking for what will be very small gaps which need a very precise pit stop, and then you drop in. When you've now got to add 5 seconds onto your pit stop time for that stop-go penalty, that's going to mean you're going to need a gap that's much further back when you start looking at where you're going to drop your car into. It's going to really hamper his race.
Lap 9 of 57 of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Under the lights, it's Oscar Piastri who leads by almost 3 seconds to George Russell's Mercedes. Lando Norris with a 5-second time penalty for being out of position on the grid, hanging over him, vying to get past his compatriot. Cannot do it yet. He's in 3rd ahead of Charles Leclerc on the alternate strategy on the medium tyre, but struggling perhaps. Gasly's 5th ahead of Antonelli. Verstappen is 7th, then comes Sainz.
These brakes are so inconsistent. It's so annoying.
Not much we can do now.
That's Charles Leclerc, while his teammate Lewis Hamilton battles with the Williams of Carlos Sainz, trying to vie and get through into the right-hander of turn 4. Hamilton on the outside, that becomes the inside as Sainz tries to bite back down the inside of the man who replaced him at the Scarlet Ferrari team. He holds his worth in the blue Williams now, hugs that inside line into the right-hander, but that runs him deep. Uphill we run, over the crest, and Max Verstappen wants it on this as well in the Red Bull. Does he try and get a move down the inside of the tight left-hander of turn number 10? Sainz holds it out of the corner. Then comes Hamilton. Then comes Verstappen. What a fight we are witnessing here. Hamilton wanting a move again. It's actually Tsunoda who's having a look, not Verstappen. Apologies. And the Ferrari driver finally gets through into the left-hander of turn 11. Hamilton taking a really wide line as Sainz. Is there a problem there? Because he's just lost 2 positions in 1 corner. It's Hamilton 8th, Tsunoda 9th, Sainz down to 10th.
I can tell you what the problem is. His tyres are absolutely shot on that Williams, partly because he's been really... There you go, Piastri on the radio talking about his tyres now struggling too. The soft tyre runners have reached the limit of what they can do with a full car full of fuel, very, very heavy at the start of this race. When Sainz gets into a battle like that, wheel to wheel, where he forgets the finesse of driving carefully and he's just trying to desperately cling on to position, he hurts his tyres even more.
Antonelli just ahead of that battle, trying another move down the inside at turn 1, late on the brakes. This time alongside the Alpine of Pierre Gasly for 5th place. Gasly holds his nerve. Now heading towards the right-hander of turn 4. Gasly in the pink and blue Alpine with the inside line, but that sends him deep into the corner. That allows Antonelli with the up and under and gets through before turn 5, 6 and 7 approach the sweeping left and right-handers, and it's Antonelli through and up into 5th. Then comes Gasly in 6th, and he's got Verstappen on the back of him.
The softs are starting to struggle.
Hamilton saying the softs are being told the softs are starting to struggle. He's on the medium tyre in 8th position. He's got Tsunoda still all over the back of him. Sainz now down to 10th. It's lap 10 of 57. Piastri leads by 3.3 seconds ahead of Russell. Then comes Norris, Leclerc, Antonelli, the top 5. Then it's Pierre Gasly, but for how much longer? The Alpine driver is having to defend for his life against the reigning champion. Former teammates Gasly and Verstappen now battling over 6th and 7th. Verstappen looks like he's got the stronger car at this stage as he makes his way through the right-hander of turn 13.
Yeah, and as we see the first few pit stops starting to unfold now, it's everybody choosing the medium tyre, which is interesting because we heard Leclerc and Hamilton talking about struggling a little bit on those medium tyres in which they started the race. As Andrew said earlier on, it's Verstappen who has the extra set of hard tyres. In what they could do in potential, and here comes the leaders in. Norris into the box right now, serving his 5-second penalty. No one can touch the car, counting down to 5, and then they go for it, and in comes Verstappen behind him.
And Gasly as well. They're all in as they try and vie for the quickest pit stop. 7.7 in the end for Lando Norris, and it's slow for Max Verstappen, who can't get out of his box. 4.7 seconds, that is an age in Formula 1 terms, over double the time of what we might expect, and he's lost back to the Pierre Gasly's Alpine and will fall into a bit of traffic as well, because Gasly has been able to get ahead of the Haas, which is just feeding out now, and Verstappen will have to slot in behind ahead of the other Alpine of Jack Doohan, and he's fallen all the way down to 17th with those pit stops. Piastri, our race leader, has stayed out. He's got a gap of 3.7 seconds ahead of George Russell. They're both on the soft tyre. Charles Leclerc is on the medium in 3rd. Antonelli 4th. Hamilton now up to 5th, ahead of Tsunoda 6th, Sainz 7th, Albon 8th, Behrman and Alonso promoted up into the top 10. Now we've had some of the top order come into the pits.
Yeah, that was an unusual error from the Red Bull team on Verstappen's car. It looked like they changed the tyres, they dropped the car on the floor, he lurched away and then had to stop while they corrected something. We're going to get a replay now. He pulls into the box perfectly well, the car goes up, wheels off, wheels back on again, he starts to roll, but then he gets a red light on their automated release system. So he then has to stop, and here he is.
That's what Verstappen had to say about that. All the tyres were fitted. It was just the red light coming on and telling him to stop.
Yeah, so that red light is triggered first of all by all of the guns being done, so the wheels are done up, but then a manual override has to happen. The person who's looking down the pit lane to make sure it's clear, so looking around the car to make sure everyone has actually done their jobs, can override and should override that to give the green light that sends people away. So somewhere in that system there was a failure. Luckily, I guess, and it's good that Verstappen did indeed stop, because it could have been something more serious.
It was a brilliant battle a few moments ago between Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Ultimately, Hamilton winning that one out as Yuki Tsunoda comes in for his first pit stop. It's been a bit of a frenetic start under the lights in Bahrain. Oscar Piastri holds the lead from pole position. He's 4 seconds clear of George Russell in the Mercedes. Lando Norris with a mega start, up from 6th to 3rd, but was out of position in his grid box. He was given a 5-second time penalty. He has now served that, having come into the pits and changed his tyres. He's fallen down the order, but he's clear of that penalty now and can work his way back up through the field. But it's still advantage Piastri at this stage, lap 12 of 57. Piastri leads almost 4 seconds to Russell, then Leclerc, Antonelli and Hamilton the top 5. Then it's Sainz in 6th ahead of his teammate Alex Albon. Ollie Behrman up to 8th, Alonso's 9th, then Lawson the top 10. Stroll is 11th ahead of Lando Norris, who has pitted onto the medium tyre. Bortoletto is 13th. Gasly, who has also pitted, down in 14th now ahead of Ocon. Max Verstappen pitted to go on the hard tyre, but a slow pit stop for him saw him lose ground to Gasly. He's now got a Haas in between himself and Gasly. Doohan is 17th, Hadjar 18th, Tsunoda also with a slow stock. He's now down to 19th, having changed onto the, not sure what tyre is on at the moment, I think the medium or possibly the hard as well. Hulkenberg 20th and last as Antonelli comes into the pits.
So a couple of interesting things. It looked like Tsunoda had a similarly slow stop in that Red Bull pit box, so maybe they have got a technical issue with the system. They'll be desperately trying to fix that right now. But interesting that Verstappen has gone onto the hard tyre. We said earlier on, he's got 2 fresh sets of those where no one else does. Now this is a gamble because no one knows what the hard tyre is going to do, how it's going to perform in these conditions around this racetrack. Hasn't been run yet all weekend. If it turns out this tyre works very well, Verstappen's got another set of them fresh, ready to go at his next pit stop. And if this tyre performs way better than the medium that everyone else is on, you could well find that Verstappen comes back in with some kind of advantage as the race plays out.
Antonelli pitted and fell behind Verstappen. We're just getting a look at Yuki Tsunoda's slow stop. He's quite tentative into the box, changes onto the medium tyre.
Same thing.
Yellow was flashing then.
Same thing. He had a system error, so that the red lights that release the driver in exactly the same way that happened for Verstappen just stayed red. They should go green, giving the driver the green flag to get out of there, and they didn't.
Tsunoda has lost out there as well. He's behind Hadjar and Jack Doohan, who pitted earlier than him, although their tyres will be more warm by the time Tsunoda gets up to the back of them. So let's keep an eye on the Japanese driver's progress in his second race for Red Bull as George Russell comes into the pits. It is Silver Arrow heading towards his Mercedes pit box. He's on the soft tyre at the moment, pitting from second place, hits his markers, the team get to work, all 4 tyres changed within 2.2 seconds, nice and quick from the Mercedes mechanics, and he's on the medium tyre.
And I can tell you that Max Verstappen on that hard tyre has just set the fastest lap of the race so far, and that is a good early sign that it's A, warming up quickly, and B, that it has got some pace in it.
He's also undercut Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes and gained a position before he set that fastest lap, so it is going quite well for Verstappen so far.
Certainly is. Lando Norris has just done a leg dive on Liam Lawson to get himself up into 9th. Norris has pitted and served a 5-second time penalty as well, so continuing to make progress. Oscar Piastri, our race leader, has not come in yet. He has got the benefit, of course, of clean air in front of him, not taking perhaps as much out of his tyres as some of those behind. Charles Leclerc has stayed out as well, along with his teammate Lewis Hamilton, but both Ferraris starting on the medium tyre, expected to go a little bit longer into this race, maybe to around between now and lap 20 we might see them start to come in for their first tyre change.
Now Harry, Lando Norris has not lost too much time with that 5-second penalty. He's still only just over 2.5 seconds behind George Russell's Mercedes, so he's still in the game here, Norris, and Piastri's about to come into the pits.
Box is the message for Oscar Piastri, who has led all 14 laps of this Bahrain Grand Prix so far, and the Papaya mechanics are there awaiting him. He will be the first box they come to in the pit lane. Nice run in for Oscar Piastri, getting rid of the soft tyres. In he comes. It's a fairly decent stop for the Australian wheel spin as he gets back onto the throttle into the pit lane. 2.3 seconds. Charles Leclerc takes the lead of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton makes it a 1-2 for Ferrari, but they have yet to stop. Out of the pits comes Oscar Piastri. He should feed out ahead of the Williams of Alex Albon, and he does so into the right-hander as Carlos Sainz makes his first pit stop. Norris picks up another position as well on Fernando Alonso, who's yet to pit. Alonso now up to 6th and 3 seconds behind George Russell. Those two are fighting on track for 2nd and 3rd before the first pit stop. So Andrew is right, Norris hasn't lost too much ground with that 5-second pit time loss.
Yeah, and crucially they've got a car in McLaren that is very, very capable on its race pace, as well as the 1-lap pace that we saw Oscar Piastri put to such good use on Saturday. The race pace looks very good, and what I mean by that is they're generally able to look after their tyres better than some of the other cars around them. That's much easier to do when you're in the lead of the Grand Prix. You're not following cars in dirty air, which right now that luxury falls to Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton out front of the Ferrari. But once they've made their pit stops, that will fall back to Oscar Piastri as the de facto leader, and he will be in prime position to manage those tyres through this middle stint of the race.
Nice tidy move from George Russell, lining that up in the middle DRS zone down towards the left-hander of turn 11 on the inside of the Williams of Alex Albon, who hasn't stopped on those soft tyres, screaming for dear life by now, surely, on board the Thai Racers Williams, and doesn't fight that one. Russell up into 4th, 2 seconds adrift from Oscar Piastri, the inherent leader, once the two Ferraris come into pit. The Ferrari's running the alternate strategy, starting on the medium tyre, looking like they might be gearing up for a first pit stop, or are they pulling the old double bluff by coming into the pits and fiddling about with a few tyres to see if they can scare anybody else into making a strategic call? Doesn't look like they have come in. So Leclerc and Hamilton hold on to P1 and P2. Then it's Piastri, Russell, Albon, the top 5. Norris is 6th ahead of Pierre Gasly, who's just got past Alonso.
At the moment, we're still on Plan B for Bravo. Plan B for Bravo.
I think Delta for me.
Plan B for Bravo. Charles Leclerc wanting the Plan D for Delta. So here we go again with the Ferrari strategy calls. Plan B, the current one he thinks they are, that's starting on a medium and then going to the hard.
Yeah, the plans are not that straightforward, in all honesty, because it's also about your stop lap. So your plan, it's not necessarily just about which tyres or how many stops, it's about which stop lap you go for. So those are things that we can't possibly know the answer to. They will have been briefed ahead of the Grand Prix in all their strategy meetings. The drivers will have had plans A, B, C, D, and maybe even beyond drummed into them over the course of this morning's meetings, and that's what they're referring to. So it's not just about, we're going to do a 2-stop or a 1-stop. It's about which stop lap, and that's a crucial bit of information. Can they extend the stint longer than they maybe initially thought? Maybe that's what Charles Leclerc is referring to. He's got some clean air. He can now start to look after his tyres a little bit longer. Maybe Plan D is going in a little bit deeper into the race than they originally thought. Yeah,
I would love it if Pirelli give us a list of strategies 1 to 5, and I would love it if that's how Ferrari just went and labelled their strategies and it was clear as day. Having just looked at how Pirelli have presented it, that is not the case, because Plan B would have him starting on the soft tyre, which was not the occasion for Charles Leclerc. So he is still out there running. The Williams mechanics are in the pit lane waiting for Alex Albon, who comes in for his first pit stop. Still yet to pit, and running up in the top order, Esteban Ocon in the Haas is currently in 7th spot, trying to repay his team after a big crash in qualifying yesterday in Q2. He held his hands up for that, did the Frenchman, and said that was his bad, but luckily no pit lane start, no damage to his gearbox, so he is in this race and started from down in 14th, so running longer into this race. Lap 17 of 57, Kimi Antonelli is the sound you're hearing, vying with Max Verstappen, who has managed to get the better of the Italian through the pit stops despite having a slower stop, but Verstappen is going well on these hard tyres compared to those around him who've elected to go on the medium tyre. Verstappen is in 8th, ahead now of Antonelli.
So Verstappen and Antonelli are fighting to get past Esteban Ocon's Haas. They should clear that relatively quickly. As for Lando Norris, he's now cleared the cars between himself and George Russell, and he's only 3.3 seconds behind the Mercedes. Here's Leclerc.
And box this lap for mediums.
Delta, please consider it.
He really is pushing for Plan D, but he's not going to get it, because into the pits comes Charles Leclerc. He's on the medium tyre. Are they going to fit another set? It looks like they've got that yellow wall tyre geared up and ready to go. All 4 tyres off and back on again. And they're going to do the double stack. Lewis Hamilton's in. It's a nice clean stop for Charles Leclerc. 2.6 seconds. Hamilton next in to hit his marks. Oscar Piastri retakes the lead of the Grand Prix. George Russell up to 2nd. Lando Norris is 3rd. And it's another tidy spot for the 7-time champion as well. 2.3 seconds. Both Ferrari cars feeding back out onto the circuit, into a little bit of traffic though, and they have gone for another set of that medium tyre. Where will Hamilton feed out? Just behind Yuki Tsunoda.
It's quite interesting. I think this year I've detected a change in Charles Leclerc's attitude on the radio. He's been quite passive in the past. Here's Verstappen's radio.
I am no tired at all.
Okay, so maybe the odds aren't working out. Max Verstappen so well after all, and he is struggling to get past that Haas of Esteban Ocon, which really should be easy for him to pass on fresh tyres, given that he's in a Red Bull. But just on Charles Leclerc, he's been quite criticised for being quite passive in the past. It was always Carlos Sainz and before him Sebastian Vettel who were arguing with the Ferrari pit wall, but it seems like Leclerc is taking more of a leadership role. They're not letting him do it yet, but it's interesting to hear him trying to do that.
Certainly is. We just had a pit lane incident involving Behrman and Liam Lawson. Behrman being released into the path of Liam Lawson. That has been noted for an unsafe release. So let's see if Haas and Behrman have any trouble there. Behrman on the hard tyre. down in 14th now. It's lap 18 of 57. Oscar Piastri leads by 3 seconds to George Russell. Lando Norris back up to third. Charles Leclerc staying out long on the medium tyre, switching it for a new medium now in 4th place. Pierre Gasly's having a good run in that Alpine, holding on to the top 5. Esteban Ocon yet to pit in the Haas. He's 6th ahead of Max Verstappen on the hard tyre 7th. Antonelli is 8th. Jack Doohan now up into the points in his Alpine. He is in 9th. And Yuki Tsunoda now rounds out the top 10, but he's got Lewis Hamilton right behind him in the Ferrari.
And I tell you what, Harry, I was talking about Lando Norris a minute ago, closing on George Russell. He's lapping so much faster than Russell at the moment, 6/10 on the previous lap, and similar sort of margin the lap before, so he could be on George Russell's tail within 2 or 3 laps.
Tsunoda's just dropped down to 11th after making it rather easy for Lewis Hamilton, who glides on by down the start-finish straight. Tsunoda trying to stick with him in the DRS zone. Tsunoda now out of the points and down to 11th. Then comes Sainz, Hadjar, Behrman, Hulkenberg, the top 15. Albon, Stroll, Alonso's down to 18th ahead of Liam Lawson and Gabriel Bortoleto. All 20 drivers still in this one, and that unsafe release involving Ollie Behrman and Liam Lawson, that has been reviewed and no further investigation.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing starting to build up is a picture of just how much cars are affected by being in the dirty air. I think Max Verstappen's really suffering behind the Haas about Esteban Ocon, but Ocon's got a nice big gap in front of him, so he's able to look after his tyres. He's not struggling in the same way with tyre overheating. It's one of the big problems on this circuit, particularly with the rear tyres, overheating them. They get too hot, they lose grip. You then spin them up more. When it overheats more, it becomes a vicious circle. You need the clear air to be able to really manage how you look after those. Lando Norris, on the other side of that, he's got a nice 5-second gap in front of him, in which he's now able to maximise what his car can do and chase down the Mercedes George Russell. Very quickly, he's going to start coming up underneath the rear wing of George Russell, so he'll start to be in the same sort of problem, but he has got a very good car under Lando Norris right now.
Yeah, another half a second on that lap, guys. So Norris is now only a second and a half behind Russell in third. Russell in second, Norris in third.
Kimi Antonelli is not done yet, though. He is behind Verstappen, having been passed by him in the pits, with strategy working out for the Dutchman and Red Bull. But Antonelli is loving a late move at turn 1. Couldn't make it work on that occasion. Comes into the right-hander of turn 4. Forces Verstappen to take the tight inside line. That forces Verstappen deep. And what a move from the Italian rookie on the reigning champion. Lovely stuff from Kimi Antonelli as they head into the sweepers. And a round of applause from the Mercedes garage. Antonelli up to 7th, Verstappen down to 8th.
That's the second time he's done that move, that cut back through turn 4. Really brilliant. And Kimi Antonelli's beginning to show all the, the hype that was around him, beginning to show what that was all about.
It certainly is. He is still, though, stuck behind Esteban Ocon in that Haas, who is running long into this race, having started on the medium tyre. I wonder if Haas might be trying something out of the box here and trying to see how their tyre wear is, or maybe if we get any kind of safety car intervention, and hope maybe a one-stop might work out for them. Be a tough order.
Well, it is a tough call, but if you are a Haas, then that's you've really got not too much to lose starting all the way back that he did. It's going to be interesting now to see if Antonelli can make his way past Ocon easier than Max Verstappen did on that harder tyre. Verstappen's hope really, I suppose, if there is any for him, is that he can run much longer, and maybe that'll give him a number of different options. He says everything's overheating on the radio. That's exactly what we're talking about. The tyres particularly getting too hot as he's desperate to try and now hang on to the back of the Mercedes. It just exacerbates the problem when you try too hard.
Verstappen is struggling here. He's slower than Jack Doohan on that last lap around. The Alpine driver is right up behind him now within the DRS, and he's bringing Lewis Hamilton along for the ride as well. It's Verstappen in 8th. Doohan 9th, Hamilton 10th, and Tsunoda a few seconds adrift now in 11th. Tsunoda in the other Red Bull in a bit of no man's land really, although last lap around he was faster than Verstappen. Tsunoda is on the medium tyre compared to Verstappen, who opted for the hard tyre, which we thought was an absolute blinder of a move initially. Now though, with the car overheating, he was struggling with brake problems throughout qualifying as well. Is it all falling away for the Dutchman on lap 21?
Yeah, not looking good. There'll be a frustrated Max Verstappen, but in the cockpit of Lando Norris's McLaren, much happier. The gap now to George Russell ahead of him, less than 1.4 seconds. Very soon he's going to be within that DRS range, and there are 3 DRS zones around this circuit, making overtaking way easier than we saw just a week ago in Suzuka.
Jack Doohan wanting to fight Verstappen ahead of him in 8th, but having to look at his mirrors because he's got a 7-time world champion in a Ferrari all over the back of him. Doohan, the rookie, after a really tough Japanese Grand Prix last weekend, line, causing huge amounts of damage to his Alpine car, and even himself was a bit winded come the end of the Grand Prix, had to be helped out of his Alpine by the former incumbent Esteban Ocon. But so far, Doohan showing much better turn of pace at a track he knows well, that every rookie, that every driver knows well too, and at the moment is holding firm ahead of Lewis Hamilton. But now, as we start lap 22, hurtling down towards turn 1, Doohan has the DRS open, so too does Hamilton. Hamilton moves out to the inside, late on the brakes for the Ferrari driver, clips the apex on the inside. Doohan will try to take a tighter line, cut back and get better traction on the exit of 2, but the job is done by Lewis Hamilton. Can Doohan fight back though with a bit of DRS? No, he can't. In the run down to turn 4 through the right-hander, Hamilton gets the move done up to 9th, Doohan down to 10th, and it's Verstappen next up ahead of them.
Yeah, Hamilton seemingly, other than Piastri, the happiest man on track right now, putting in some quick lap times. His car's in exactly the right temperature window, exactly the problem that Max Verstappen has right now. Lewis Hamilton does not have. His car's working well, and he's going to fight his way through the field, and it is in fact Verstappen, I think, who's up next now that he's got past Doohan. So we're going to see a stark difference, I think, between one driver in a Ferrari that's very happy and one in a Red Bull that really isn't. Here he goes.
Here he comes then, down towards the left-hander of turn 11 with the DRS. Verstappen doesn't even try and fight it. That is a smooth move from Lewis Hamilton, who makes it look simply lovely as he gets ahead of Max Verstappen. These two battling over 8th spot.
Yeah, how many world championships between them? 11, and they're battling for 8th spot. So yeah, not ideal for either of them, but as I said, it's Lewis Hamilton that seems the far happier with the fastest lap of the race, and still lighting up the timesheets green, saying he's going quicker than he has done so far this Grand Prix.
Yeah, I can't even brake anymore. It's just ridiculous.
So Max Verstappen's not having a happy time. He's now got Jack Doohan hunting him down right behind him in the Alpine. He's in danger at the moment of dropping down to 10th place. And he's lucky that it's only his teammate Yuki Tsunoda behind him to stop him from dropping out of the top 10 altogether.
This is from the pendulum swinging one way to the next, from pole to the win in Japan to 7th place in qualifying for Verstappen, now down to 9th in the Grand Prix on lap 23 of 57. What is going on down at Red Bull? They are struggling so much this weekend in a car that not even Max Verstappen can drive.
Meanwhile, up at the front, or very nearly at the front, Lando Norris has kind of got a bit stuck in the dirty air behind George Russell. He's stuck about 1.2, 1.4 seconds behind the Mercedes, and he's now coming under pressure from Charles Leclerc, who's lapping very quickly in that Ferrari after stopping later than the McLaren.
I also think it's worth saying, I know the dirty air has its effect, but George Russell running an excellent race for Mercedes, up to 2nd where he should have started. Let's be honest, the McLaren is the quicker car. Piastri's got a 5-second gap, but I think Russell is doing a good job at keeping Norris behind him, and that strategy working out well so far for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. A 5-second gap from Russell to Piastri is okay, I'd say, at the moment. It gives Russell the sort of freedom that he's not tucked up behind another car through the corners, lessening the impact of that dirty air experience we were talking about. It could well be that he might be biding his time, looking after tyres, and here goes. Who's that? That's Leclerc on Russell. And Russell gets him back. Norris
is fighting over 3rd here, coming down into turn 1. It's the Ferrari driver who's got the advantage behind on fresher medium tyres. Is Charles Leclerc, the Monegasque, through the right-hander of turn 4. Almost had it done the previous corner. Norris fighting back. So Norris is no longer putting the pressure on George Russell ahead of him. He's fighting to stay in the podium positions. The man who came into this round as the championship leader by 1 point after a tough qualifying where he said he couldn't even feel like he'd driven a Formula 1 car before. Is it now starting to come back and bite Lando Norris here as Charles Leclerc piles on the pressure?
And Russell's only just ahead of them. Of course, remember, Russell stopped early as well. So what's Leclerc going to do here? He could, it's a demonstration of the offset of tyres. If you stop early, yes, you gain positions, but you can run out of tyres quite quickly and then come under threat like he is doing from Leclerc at the moment.
Yeah, it was Charles Leclerc who tried to dive deep down into turn 1 and wasn't quite close enough, went late into the corner, and that allowed Norris with the undercut to hold the position, aided by DRS. Norris saw it coming actually and knew exactly how to play his cards there.
And the other quirk of this circuit, as well as the sort of abrasive surface that we have, the high temperatures do disappear as the race goes on. We're now very much into the night time. The sun has long since gone down. We're under the bright lights around this track. The sky is dark. The temperature is going to be dropping continually now, right through to the end of the race, and that does change the way certain cars behave. It looks right now at this phase in the race, in the middle stint on the medium tyre, that it's the Ferrari, both in the hands of Lewis Hamilton, but also Charles Leclerc, as Hamilton makes a bold move on Antonelli, and Leclerc gets back past Lando Norris.
Into the right-hander of turn 4, uphill, a never-ending corner. Leclerc has the outside line. Can he hold it? Lando Norris will try and tuck in, but no, he can't. Norris concedes the position. Charles Leclerc is up into the podium places. Leclerc in third, Norris down to fourth.
And Hamilton did get past Antonelli as well, so two Ferraris on the move right now, as we said, in this middle stint, with the temperatures the way they are, the fuel loads the way they are, on that medium tyre, it's the Ferrari that seems to be working best.
Yeah, so Leclerc's got a 7-lap tyre offset, which is why he's so much quicker than the McLaren, even though the McLaren is fundamentally a quicker car. The question is, how does this equalise out over the race distance? What did McLaren do about trying to get Norris back ahead of Leclerc?
Lap 25 of 57, Piastri leads Russell by 5.4 seconds. Charles Leclerc is now third, ahead of Lando Norris. Pierre Gasly running in the top 5. Esteban Ocon still yet to pit in his Alpine, in his Haas is 6th, ahead of Kimi Antonelli. Lewis Hamilton 9th, Max Verstappen 9th, ahead of Jack Doohan. Then it's Tsunoda, Sainz, Behrman, Albon, Hadjar the top 15. Hulkenberg is 16th, ahead of Alonso. Stroll, Lawson and Gabriel Bortoletto make up the remainder of the 20 drivers still in this race. Lap 26 of 57. I'll tell you what, my timing screen says Esteban Ocon has pitted, so I've not seen him come into the pits. I don't know if that's an error on my thing, but either way, Ocon has had a brilliant rise up to 6th so far. I don't think we have seen him come in, but perhaps we have missed that one, and he is about to get done by Lewis Hamilton down the inside into turn 1. Late on the brakes with the aid of DRS, makes it stick. Hamilton now up to 6th. This race now coming back towards Ferrari. The tyre advantage paying off for the time being, but of course this will come back around. We're expecting them all to do another pit stop. It's lap 26 of 57. There's still a way to go in this one.
Yeah, and for the final stint, what we expect to be one more pit stop and one more final stint, everybody has now another set of fresh mediums, pretty much. Verstappen had only one set at the start of the Grand Prix, but of course he's used the hard tyre for the middle stint, and I'm pretty sure, given how poorly that's performed, he's going to ditch that and get straight onto the medium when they come in for their final stop.
Except Ferrari can't go onto the medium, because they stopped and started on the medium, and they've changed to the medium at the second stop. They have to go to either hard or soft at the next stop. They've got no choice, and the hard is struggling on Verstappen's Red Bull. So is that going to put the advantage back towards McLaren and Lando Norris?
But don't forget that those that at the start of the race, they started the race on the soft tyre, so 2 stints on medium and a soft, particularly in your cars much lighter on fuel, might actually work out as better than doing it the other way around and starting on the soft, then 2 stints on the medium. So it's early days and there's a long way to go, and they've still got places to make up, but Ferrari looking good. Could they have just pulled the master stroke on strategy this weekend?
Just an update, I don't know if we said it, but Kimi Antonelli lap 27 of 57. Oscar Piastri continues to lead this Grand Prix from pole position. He's 6 seconds clear of George Russell, and then it's Charles Leclerc in third after the first pit stops. It feels like this race is swinging now towards the Ferrari drivers, but it's still very much Piastri who holds firm at the top. Lando Norris is fourth. And it's a slow pit stop for Max Verstappen once more as he comes into the pit. 6.2 seconds. The yellow flashing light once again on the gantry at Red Bull's pit box. There's clearly some sort of technical issue going on there.
No, I've got to say that was a different issue altogether. That was getting the right front tyre just would not come off. So everyone had changed their tyres, but on the right front they were still struggling to get the original tyre off and then get the new one on. He has switched onto the medium tyre like we predicted. He's back in the race, but another 6 seconds lost in the pits. His day's going from bad to worse.
Before our 5 Live update, I was just about to say Kimi Antonelli has been getting a lot of black and white flags for track limits, so he will have to be a little more careful in abusing those. He's currently in 8th.
I think the pace is good. Leclerc just had fresher tyres. Neither of the cars ahead have another medium. That's our opportunity. Stay with them, mate. Doing well.
Lando Norris being told to stay with them ahead. He's 1.7 seconds behind Charles Leclerc, who got through on newer medium tyres a few laps ago. George Russell still very much within touching distance in second, a further 1.2 seconds up the road. Oscar Piastri is starting to leave them slightly for dust. 6.2 seconds the Australian leads this Grand Prix by. Gasly rounds out the top 5 ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who is starting to show a bit of colour now. He is fastest lap so far in 6th place. Esteban Ocon comes into the pits from 7th. So too does Kimi Antonelli, do in 9th. Tsunoda, the top 10. Sainz, Vettel, Albon, Hadjar, Alonso, the top 15. And it's Hulkenberg, Stroll, Lawson, Verstappen feeds out in 19th after his pit stop to get rid of those hard tyres that were not working for him. He's now on the medium. Gabriel Bortoleto is 20th, last in this Grand Prix.
And that radio message you just heard to Lando Norris there does clarify position. In fact, he was absolutely right. George Russell does not have another set of mediums, so it was actually the 2 McLarens and the 2 Ferraris that had 2 sets of fresh mediums, but Antonelli and Russell only had the 1. So Russell is going to have to make a decision, which will almost certainly, unless he can go and run very, very deep, go onto the harder tyre, which we've already seen is not the preferred one.
Well, Antonelli's just chosen the soft, or his engineers rather have chosen the softs for his stop, and also Esteban Ocon kept that position ahead of Antonelli in that pit stop. We're just seeing a replay of Max Verstappen's slow stop, and it's the flashing light again. I have to say, I'll just make this observation now, and the front right wheel.
So that's the first 2 pit stops, I think you'll find.
That was Tsunoda.
Yeah, sorry. So someone said to me, someone from another team pointed out that Red Bull's pit stops have gone downhill this year. They're not, they used to be consistently the fastest team, always like 1.8, 1.9 seconds. And this was a couple of races ago now, this person said to me the Red Bull stops are not as good as they used to be. They're still not bad, they are bad today. And the observation he was making was that Jonathan Wheatley, who was the sporting director of Red Bull and was so instrumental in making that team such a finely honed racing machine in terms of operations, has obviously gone to Sauber. And he thought that they were missing Wheatley.
Well, I can tell you the other big reason for it, and it's not just affecting Red Bull, but actually because Red Bull used to be a team that put a huge amount of time, energy, but also budget into developing technologies for those pit stops. Well, now we're in this cost-capped era. There's now very much a feeling up and down the pit lane that putting that huge amount of money into developing these really advanced technologies to help the pit stops is not as important as putting it into the car itself. And so we've seen a much slower rate of development when it comes to pit stop tech and procedures, and that's going to be hampering, particularly then because they were so far advanced. We might be seeing that it's hurting them more than others.
Lap 29 of 57 of the Bahrain Grand Prix, having more pit stops come your way. Gasly's coming along with his teammate Jack Doohan. Hadjar has been in further back. Esteban Ocon too for another pit stop. Max Verstappen has pitted in the last couple of laps as well, so the order slightly still to be fine-tuned.
Why is my right red light on? I can't turn it off.
Stand by, investigating.
That was Lando Norris saying, why is my right red light on? He cannot turn it off. Is that a light on the steering wheel? We're just trying to have a little look at it, but carrying on his way down the main straight towards turn 1, Norris, who's currently occupying 4th place.
I just want to say something and let it sink in for everybody. Max Verstappen, just after half distance in the Bahrain Grand Prix, is running 17th behind Lance Stroll's Aston Martin.
Yeah, not good, is it?
He's had another pit stop, to be fair, but it underlines what has happened to Red Bull this weekend. We know they weren't the team to beat coming into this season. They had open struggles, but it always seemed like Max Verstappen was able to outdrive the car and provide that Verstappen magic. We saw that this time last week in Japan, able to get the pole lap out of nowhere, a pole lap for the ages, and the nature of the track meant, well, he was able to hold on to the lead and take the Grand Prix win. Fast forward a week in Bahrain under the lights, a struggle from FP1 through to Q3, and that has continued into the Grand Prix.
But there's also a great side to this, right, in that we're going to 24 different races this year on 24 different types of racetrack, different types of conditions and environments, and the performance we're already seeing is swinging between one and another of those events. That's great for Formula One, because if the balance of performance moves around, as Tsunoda comes very, very close to Carlos Sainz's Williams, almost touching, maybe even they did make contact.
Yeah, Sainz dived down the inside, and Tsunoda, there was contact as bits of carbon fibre fly off the back of one of the Williams or either the Red Bull from the rear. They went side by side, and I think it was the Williams that had a bit of carbon fibre come off the back of it further round the lap as they head through the right-hander of turn 4. Tsunoda, who hasn't had his second pit stop yet, is now up to 7th. So too Carlos Sainz, who is up into 6th. It's Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, the top 3. Then comes Norris, 2 seconds adrift. Hamilton, the top 5. Sainz, Tsunoda, and Albon is the top 8. Behrman and Gasly currently rounding out the point scorers. Alonso's 11th, ahead of Esteban Ocon. Kimi Antonelli, who did put on that soft tyre for his second stop, is now in 13th, ahead of Max Verstappen on the medium tyre, who now does have the fastest lap. Doohan is 15th, Stroll 16th, Liam Lawson, Bortoletto, Hadjar and Hulkenberg, the 20 drivers.
So one of the reasons that the soft tyre lasted only a few laps, less than 10 for most people at the beginning of this race, first of all because the cars were so heavy and full of 100 kilos of fuel, but also because the temperatures were much higher. This is a tyre that, yes, gives you grip, gives you performance, but it overheats very, very easily. Now, though, we're much later into the Grand Prix. As we said, the sun's long since gone down, temperatures are falling, but also the cars are much, much lighter. So Antonelli, we've seen how long that some of the guys were able to take that softer tyre into the Grand Prix. Antonelli now has a pretty good job to do. He's got half a race to do on it, but it's in very different conditions to those who started the Grand Prix in it all that time ago, 31 laps ago.
I don't think he's going to make the end of the race on that soft. He's going to have to stop again.
He may well do, but when it comes to Ferrari, who we know have got to make a decision and they can't go on to what we all now think is the preferred tyre, the medium, they might have a better option to run longer into this Grand Prix and stick the soft tyre on, a little bit later, do the opposite strategy, I guess, to those around them that started on the soft. For them, this could still very much work out with the soft tyre.
Lap 32 of 57. Oscar Piastri now has a 7.2 second lead. We've barely seen the Australian in this race, down in the lead of this race, ahead of Russell in second. Then it's Leclerc third, Norris fourth, Lewis Hamilton the top 5. There's a nice gaggle fighting in the midfield. Sainz heads Tsunoda, Albon, and then a little bit further back is Behrman and Gasly, although Gasly opts for the inside, and Tsunoda nearly comes to blows once more with the back of Carlos Sainz. Williams, I think there was a bit of contact. The rear end of that Red Bull coming into turn 1 is looking very shaky every time he hits the brakes. Tsunoda still behind Sainz. He's in a Williams sandwich because Alex Albon is right behind him. Gasly in front of Behrman, and further back Esteban Ocon fighting with Kimi Antonelli, and Max Verstappen 1.4 seconds behind them in 13th.
It's incredible that Tsunoda's still got a front wing and that Sainz has got a diffuser. The safety car's now been deployed because there's so much debris around the track from those two. That's 2 collisions, similar point on the circuit between 2 of the very same cars. Safety car out, that's going to close up the field. And just one final point before we get into what that means. Max Verstappen, just to highlight how terrible the hard tyres were on the Red Bull, stuck the medium tyre on and has set the fastest lap of the race so far.
And what are they going to do? Strategy, pit stops. Here comes Piastri
into the pits for Oscar Piastri. Safety car out then at the end of lap 32, coming into lap 33 now, and Piastri making use of this safety car because that means the field has to go slower out on the track. It bunches them up, so you only lose about 16 seconds in the pits compared to 23 seconds if we were doing this under green flag running.
And ideally this is not what Ferrari wanted, because it now puts them on exactly the same type of tyre strategy, certainly in terms of timing, as everybody else. They would have much preferred to run deeper into the Grand Prix to make use of the soft tyre on a shorter stint. They've had to stop early, and I think as a result of that they've gone on to the hard tyre.
They have, and Russell's on the soft and Norris behind them on the medium. So how's that going to play out with these 3 drivers nose to tail after the safety car pulls in?
Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton all electing to come into the pits. I think most of the field will, as Hamilton now comes out in 5th spot. Once it all comes out in order, lock up from Yuki Tsunoda's Red Bull as he tries to get down to the pit limiter and head towards his stop. Could this benefit the likes of the Japanese driver who stayed out a little bit longer than his teammate, who is now making his way up through the field? Nice clean stop this time around for the Red Bull driver. The 2 Williams have double stacked as well. That might have delayed Albon slightly, who was fairly close to the back of Carlos Sainz when they were out on track. But safety car is out then for what we believe is debris out in the sector 3 due to Tsunoda and Sainz bashing wheels for the last couple of laps. So whilst they clear that up, everybody will have to line up behind Bert Meyerlander in the Aston Martin safety car, and it will be Oscar Piastri who heads the field.
So that was a bit mad, but I think that the people who didn't stop were
Verstappen.
Yeah, Verstappen, Ocon, Doohan, and someone else whose name I haven't got quite right. Ocon, Verstappen, Doohan. Didn't stop because obviously Verstappen had just stopped recently, hadn't he?
So
yes,
yeah,
but that's going to vault him up. Here's Hamilton.
Great job with the stops, guys. Great job.
That's Hamilton saying great jobs. That's really helped out the top 5 who will hold their positions.
I don't think it has helped out Ferrari. I think Ferrari the timing was terrible for Ferrari because they've lost their early advantage of being on the tyre offset. They're now it's now a straight run to the flag for these top 5 guys, albeit a few of them on different tyres. So we have got a tyre offset in terms of performance, but not in terms of lifetime, and I think that's what Ferrari were banking on.
I think for Lewis Hamilton, though, it's still a gain on where he qualified from in the lower reaches of the top 10. Just seeing another look at Yuki Tsunoda giving Carlos Sainz a little push out of turn 1, and I think that's where the debris started to be littered onto the track off the back of the Williams.
The problem for Ferrari was, I'm convinced they would have been hoping they could have gone onto that soft tyre with a long middle stint, longer than everyone else, take advantage of a performing soft tyre over a very short stint at the end. Now they can't do that, and because they can't use the medium, they've had to go onto the hard tyre, and we've already seen that earlier in the race that hard tyre certainly didn't work on the Red Bull racing car of Max Verstappen. Will it work on the Ferrari? We don't know, but I doubt anyone would think that's the preferred tyre at this point in the Grand Prix.
Got the likes of Kimi Antonelli stopping for a 3rd time in this race as well, going onto another set of the soft tyre. Yes.
I'm also going to say Max Verstappen, he's up to 8th now after not stopping under the safety car, but he's on 7-lap old medium tyres, and he's got lots of drivers behind him on much fresher tyres, some of them on softs, some of them on mediums. So Max Verstappen could have really quite an uncomfortable final part of this race.
He could have, unless it's the medium tyre, which is the ideal one that everyone wants to be on.
On a soft is pretty audacious.
Pretty audacious, George Russell has to say about being on a soft tyre till the end of the race. It's lap 34 of 57. Safety car is out for a bit of debris on track that needs to be cleared up, and it's clearly taking a little bit of time because the safety car is still out there. It's Piastri who leads Russell, Leclerc, Norris and Hamilton, the top 5. People electing to use the safety car to have a cheaper pit stop. Gasly is 6th, ahead of Esteban Ocon. It's really helped him out. Max Verstappen is now up to 8th, but he's on older medium tyres. Could he be susceptible to those behind who've gone for fresher tyres and quicker tyres? Doohan is just behind him. Carlos Sainz rounds out the top 10. His teammate Yuki Tsunoda has gone for the soft tyre to the end, perhaps an 11th, ahead of Ollie Behrman doing the same in the Haas. Alex Albon is 13th. Kimi Antonelli stopped 3 times in this race, has been showing how to make moves down into turn 1. Let's see how high he can climb up the order. From 14th, Alonso 15th, Hadjar 16th, Hulkenberg is 17th ahead of Liam Lawson. Then comes Lance Stroll and Gabriel Bortoleto 20th. All 20 drivers still in this race.
Yeah, so top 3 all on different tyres. Medium for Piastri, Russell on the soft, Leclerc on the hard.
Orlando Russell's already worried about the soft for this leg of stint.
Yeah, I don't think he should be. I mean, the soft was mega. I think it's a good tyres.
So that's very interesting, isn't it? Feedback from McLaren driver on the strategy of Mercedes. I was just going to say, Russell's going to have the advantage once we get racing again when the safety car pulls in. Initially, it'll warm up very quickly, that tyre. He'll get good early performance. Leclerc behind on the hard tyre is going to take much longer to get temperature into that harder tyre on the Ferrari. But it was interesting that Russell and Leclerc, and in fact both Ferraris, had exactly the same choice to make. Pitting on the same lap, exactly the same tyre allocation, same number of laps to go, and they've both chosen 2 very, very different options. One of them will have got this right, the other will have got it wrong.
Safety car ending this lap, having had that debris cleared, which we think was sparked out of the Tsunoda and Sainz clash. No major damage for those 2, but that incident has actually been noted by race control for causing a collision for Tsunoda. Let's see if that gets elevated. But with the safety car coming in then, it will be Bernd Mailander in the Aston Martin car who will drive off into the distance, and Oscar Piastri will take over as the effective pace setter, and it will be up to him as to when he will hit the throttle and go. Of course, he has to wait. Any overtaking can't be done until that first safety car line is reached. Here's
a bold prediction for you. How about this? How about if Oscar Piastri wins this race with Lando Norris second and Max Verstappen third? If George Russell's soft tyre falls apart and if the hard tyres don't work, those are the three next best placed drivers to take advantage.
You reckon Max Verstappen's going to finish third? That is a bold prediction.
It was a bold prediction, didn't I?
That's what we like. We like bold predictions for Formula One. This race, well, I think compared to last week, we can already say it's a bit more alive. Let's just say, just very quickly, I mean, in the old days, then yes, Verstappen would have finished third, but it just goes to show how far Red Bull have fallen. That I think that's like not going to happen. But let's find out.
I don't think it's going to happen either. That's why it's a bold prediction.
Green flag on track. The safety car has made it back to the pits. It's the end of lap 35 of 57 under the lights at the Bahrain International Circuit. Oscar Piastri leads the field out of the final right-hander and down the start-finish straight, and Lando Norris all over the back of Charles Leclerc, who's not had a good restart. Lando Norris trying to tuck into the slipstream. They all file neck to toe, flying their way down to turn one. Norris to the inside. Can he make it move? No. Sparks flying all throughout the field. Piastri holds on to the lead. Hamilton battling now with Lando Norris too, and I think Hamilton has managed to make it work. Norris, having battled Charles Leclerc, trying to make that move work, has lost out to the second Ferrari. Side by side they go, the two British races. It's the Ferrari, followed by the McLaren, followed by the other Ferrari as they make their way single file through the sweeping right-handers of 5, then 6 into the left-hander. Downhill braking into turn 7. The Ferrari of Charles Leclerc has third. Norris stabilising in fourth, with Hamilton having to concede back into 5th. But what a restart here in Bahrain. Oscar Piastri heads the field.
Yeah, once again, Piastri did exactly what he needed to do. He's been calm, controlled and measured all the way through, from the lights going out at the beginning of this race all the way through to now. He's got George Russell with those soft tyres trying to make use of the extra performance. He is within a second of Piastri, so he will get DRS. He's going to have pressure coming from behind Piastri, but I think he's got all the tools underneath him to be able to deal with it. But great work from the Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton to make up places.
I think he might well have enjoyed that one, but Lando Norris came back at him and almost fancied a go at getting back on the other Ferrari. Charles Leclerc was just a little bit further up the road on the exit of turn 4, where you then have to slot in single file. You dare to go side by side there, and one of you's flying off the road in this current age of Formula One car. Lap 37 of 57. Piastri leads by 0.8 of a second to George Russell, going to the end on the soft tyre. Then comes Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris, who is saying he's being told to give back the position to Lewis Hamilton, having had Hamilton on the radio saying he was passed off the track. Hamilton the top 5 as it currently stands. Gasly is 6th, Ocon 7th, Verstappen still in 8th ahead of Jack Doohan. Yuki Tsunoda rounds out the points scoring places as Norris does give back 4th place to Lewis Hamilton at the right-hander of turn 4.
Yeah, it's the right decision. Norris has got a car capable of getting that place back. There's a long way still to go, 20 more laps to go in this Grand Prix, and Norris can easily fight his way back past the 2 Ferraris. He doesn't want to risk getting yet another penalty in this Grand Prix. He's got a championship to think about. It's not just all about today. This is a long game he's playing.
Kimi Antonelli almost driving off the road into the approach of the right-hander of turn 8 as he tries to find his way past the Williams of Carlos Sainz, who rather aggressively got past him on the restart, almost forced him off the track, locking up Mark into the left-hander of turn number 10.
Yeah, that wasn't Carlos Sainz's finest move. He was out of control, both front brakes locked as he ran wide, and Kimi Antonelli had no choice but to veer well out of the way, compromising him and even costing a further position to the other Williams of Alex Albon.
Actually, Sainz made a further loss there because his teammate Alex Albon got through on them both. And Sainz also had to run wide as well. Right then, it is coming up to lap 38 of 57. Piastri leads. Then comes Charles Leclerc, although George Russell, I think he's got a transponder issue because he is still out there on track. The graphics having him falling all the way down the field as Lewis Hamilton defends from Lando Norris coming into the right-hander of turn 1. Meanwhile, Verstappen is fighting fighting with the Haas of Esteban Ocon, and does get through the Dutchman on the Frenchman as they emerge out of turn 2. Verstappen up to 6th. We hurtle down to the right-hander of turn 4 once again, and Lando Norris spying round the outside of Lewis Hamilton gets himself up into 4th spot.
Yeah, good stuff. That's exactly what we were talking about earlier. Norris knew he had the car, but the capability to fight his way back past, so giving that position back to Lewis Hamilton, now proven to be the right choice. Now Lando Norris has got a 5-second gap up to the other Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, but there is a big tyre difference. Norris on the preferred medium tyre, Leclerc on the less preferred hard tyre. Leclerc around 3 seconds back, although I think we have got, as you said, a transponder issue for Russell, because Russell is in 2nd place. The gap about 1.3 seconds to Piastri, so that fight very much still on. Russell, though, how long can he keep those soft tyres alive?
I think Merlin. Still holding on to it even after a safety car restart. He's got pressure from George Russell behind, but I think the Australian has it. It's Lando Norris who's doing the most fighting action, though, trying to get himself onto the podium and fighting with Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. He's just managed to get ahead of his British compatriot. Norris up to 4th. Lap 39 of 57, and I think a few moments ago, if I was in the Mercedes garage, I would have had a mini panic because George Russell plummeted all the way to 20th and last, and the graphics on our screens have had to be cleared. So at the moment, we're running off the timing screens only as down into the right-hander of turn 1. It's the Haas of Ollie Behrman fighting with the Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda and making a car move like I've never seen it before. Is Behrman really? The angles on that making it almost impossible to keep control as Alex Albon tries to find himself down the inside of Behrman in the run up to turn 4. Behrman sees that one off, and then Albon has to get out of it straight away, and in doing so loses out to the 2nd Mercedes of Kimi Antonelli, who peels through in the run down to the right-hander of turn 8. This the battle over 10th position, which Tsunoda holds ahead of Behrman. Then comes Antonelli, then Alex Albon in 13th.
Well, that brief safety car closing everybody up has really brought this race alive, certainly down through the midfield. Battles all over the place, wheel-to-wheel racing is exactly what we want to see. Out front, Oscar Piastri looks like he's settling into a groove. He's got a gap of 1.5 seconds back to George Russell, broken the DRS gap. That means Russell now is going to be really struggling in the turbulent wake of that McLaren, trying desperately to not overheat the soft tyres, which are so easy to do on that type of tyre. And Charles Leclerc, about 3.5 seconds back, just biding his time, hoping there'll come a moment when those soft tyres on Russell's car will fall off a cliff, allowing Leclerc to make his way up towards the front.
Lap 40 of 57 under the lights at the Bahrain International Circuit. Oscar Piastri leads by 1.7 seconds ahead of George Russell. Then comes Charles Leclerc in 3rd. Lando Norris is 4th, with Lewis Hamilton rounding out the top 5. Pierre Gasly is 6th ahead of Max Verstappen. Then comes Esteban Ocon 8th. Jack Doohan in 9th. Yuki Tsunoda rounds out the point scorers in the Red Bull in 10th. Ollie Behrman right on the back of him, though, in 11th. Then comes Kimi Antonelli and Alex Albon with his Williams teammate tucked up behind and under pressure, actually, from Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber down the inside for the whole. This is the battle over 14. Sainz manages to sweep round and hold the position. Behind Hülkenberg are the 2 Racing Bulls of Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar. They're rather having a race to forget in 16th and 17th. Fernando Alonso and his teammate Lance Stroll find themselves in 18th and 19th, with Gabriel Bortoleto 20th. All 20 drivers still in this race, and after a safety car to clear up some debris on track, the field is so tight and we are running to the end here. How will the tyres hold up? We've got a mix of tyre compounds on our top running cars. Let's see what the next few laps unfold.
Yeah, a big shout out to Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, who's still lapping very, very quickly and holding up the current world champion in Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen on the medium tyre, Gasly on the hard tyre. And actually Gasly, although we've heard from Lewis Hamilton on the radio saying the tyres suck, he's on the hard tyre. Gasly on that hard tyre still putting in some really quite decent lap times. Lando Norris as well lapping quickly, but Verstappen, if he is going to make that elusive podium, he's going to have to find his way past Gasly in the next couple of laps pretty quickly.
You know, Max Verstappen has worked his way back to where he started this Grand Prix. He's been up and down the field throughout the course of the 41 laps we've had so far, and is right in the thick of it. I have to say, it's going well for Alpine so far. The only team yet to score any points, right now heading for a double points finish. Jack Doohan hoping to get his first points in his rookie season. The Australian currently in 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda trying to hold on to that final point in 10th to get his first points as a Red Bull driver, but he is right in a train of cars with Behrman and Antonelli all over the back of him. Tsunoda is stuck behind the Alpine of Doohan, while Tsunoda's teammate Verstappen is stuck behind the other Alpine of Pierre Gasly further up the order.
Yeah, that's right, but out front it's Piastri pulling a gap now on George Russell, so George Russell almost certainly starting to struggle with those tyres. It was only a matter of time. They had a choice to make in that pit stop. Do we go hard tyre, which they had a set of, or do we go soft tyre? They also had a new set of those. There's a long way to go in this race, and even George Russell questioning whether that was the right decision. He's got a lot of work to do. He can't go flat out, which he really wants to do.
The car won't turn.
That's Hamilton saying the car won't turn, Mark. That's not good, is it?
I always love messages like that, because of course the car will turn, it just won't quite turn in the way that he wants it to. It's about turning. He's talking about probably getting understeer, you know, and he's already been on complaining about the tyre. It's about getting temperature in the tyre, and when you do get the temperature in, then the car simply does what you want it to do. It turns when you put a steering wheel input in. When you don't have that temperature, it just slides across the racetrack. It's such a frustrating thing, understeer, because it costs you so much time, and in the moment there's nothing you can do about it.
Last lap around, Tsunoda and Behrman set identical lap times as they're trying to fight their way up through the order. Tsunoda actually trying to close onto the back of the Alpine of Jack Doohan. Just a word on the championship order: if it ended like this, Piastri winning and Lando Norris finishing in 4th, they would be tied on 74 points apiece at the top of the championship. But on countback, it would be Piastri who would go ahead and take the lead of this championship away from his teammate. This was the race that Oscar Piastri needed after falling off the podium and only picking up a couple of points at his home race in the opening round in Australia. It's races like this that he really needed to lay down the marker and show to McLaren why, when it comes to it in a championship fight, he should be the one they back.
Yeah, and we're just seeing a replay of Liam Lawson, who made contact with Nico Hülkenberg, and he has just been given a 5-second time penalty for causing that collision. So Liam Lawson, whose season has not gone the way he wanted it to, with all the hype that he came in as initially a Red Bull Racing driver, now down at Racing Bulls, and all the way down in 15th position, he's now got a 5-second time penalty to add to that.
I think a word has to be said as well for the two Haas drivers who have really recovered after their tough qualifying. Esteban Ocon right now is looking to get some healthy points in 8th spot, while Ollie Behrman, having qualified last in 20th position, is right on the fringes and well and truly in the battle for those final points playing positions. He's got Tsunoda ahead of him and Antonelli right behind him. In fact, this is really the closest battle we're seeing play out on track at the moment. In terms of Gasly versus Verstappen, which is the battle just ahead of this one, Gasly is still in 6th place, about 1.6 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen, but we're getting a bit of a stalemate in this midfield battle at the moment. Tsunoda still can't find a way through on Jack Doohan's Alpine.
Yeah, and Doohan just had a big moment there, which will allow Tsunoda to close up a little bit. But the problem that Tsunoda's got is exactly the same problem that Max Verstappen has, in that Alpine, being driven by Gasly in front of Verstappen and Jack Doohan in front of Tsunoda, is very, very fast through the corners. We were looking at the GPS trace after qualifying yesterday, and through most of the twisty bits of this circuit, particularly the middle sector, that car was as quick as the McLarens through the corners. It's down the long straights where they suffer, but because Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda are coming out of those twisty bits so far behind the Alpine car, they're not close enough by the end of the straight to make that count.
12 months ago for Alpine, they occupied the last row of the grid in qualifying for the Bahrain Grand Prix. They are having a brilliant turnaround under the lights and looking on course to score their first points of the season. Right now they are 10th with 0 points to their name after 3 rounds. Bahrain looking to bring a change in fortune for them. We've got more work being done by the stewards room. Incident involving Sainz and Antonelli is under investigation, forcing another driver off the track, and 10-second time penalty given for Carlos Sainz, who was deemed to be the man responsible for that. So Sainz, who had qualified inside the top 10, falling down to 15th now. That will compound a rather disappointing race for the Spaniard.
Yeah, that was the one that we saw a few laps ago, and he did have a massive lunge on the brakes, locked the tyres up and just went sailing on. it did absolutely force Antonelli off wide, so that's going from bad to worse for the Williams. But yeah, out in front, Piastri comfortable now, 2.5 second gap. Leclerc and Norris though very, very close, nothing between the two on track at the moment,
and they're right behind Russell as well, so the fight for second place and third at the final two podium positions in this race is really definitely on. We're all in one camera shot at the moment. Norris has closed up on Leclerc quite considerably over the last 2 or 3 laps after the race was looking a bit static for a few laps after the safety car.
About 44.57, Oscar Piastri leads that gaggle. He's got the lead over the field by 2.5 seconds to George Russell, who sweeps his way through the right-hander of turn 12, quickly followed by the Scarlet Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and the Papaya McLaren of Lando Norris, all almost within the same corner of each other. This is a battle that will go all the way to the end. George Russell has the advantage for now when it comes to position in second, Leclerc third, and Norris hunting him down, desperate to try and make amends for his qualifying and being out of position at the start of the race, getting a 5-second time penalty. He gets the DRS and will try and line up Charles Leclerc down the main straight, but he's not closing in enough. Will he have a dart down to the inside? He has a little look, but he's not brave enough and he's not late enough. He can't find a way through. Charles Leclerc holds the position for now. Third for Leclerc, Norris fourth.
Yeah, so what's great is we've got 3 different teams occupying the top 3 positions.
So, George, we have an issue affecting DRS. It's a timing issue only. I can give you a default to override it.
Give it to me down the back straight.
Yeah, once we do it, you have to wait until I tell you can use DRS.
So what that means is the system that operates the DRS is malfunctioning in some way. The default to override it is going to be a switch position on the steering wheel, which is why George Russell's saying, don't give it to me until we get down that long back straight where he's got some time to stop and think and understand, because it'll be an unusual switch change, so he's going to have to give a little bit of his sort of cognitive load to that, and it will take some time, so that's why he's asking for it there. But yeah, 3 different teams occupying the top 3 positions, 3 different race strategists sitting on the pit wall, all wondering which one of them has got it right, because all 3 of those teams are playing very different games today, and we've got another 10 or 12 laps to go, and it's not going to play out and see who's got that entirely right until the closing laps of this Grand Prix.
Just seeing Carlos Sainz come into the pits, and he has got rather a lot of damage to the right side pod of that Williams with a big hole in it. He's come back out into this race on the soft tyre, but really he is now last and not in the fight for this one. Williams, where they were expecting to bag some more points this weekend, not so much the case. Battle on at the front and lock up going into turn 1, and wide goes Lando Norris, trying to find his way around the outside of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc holds it, Norris trying to pile on the pressure, but in doing so sails deep, gets himself together again, but he's lost time now on the back of Charles Leclerc, who heads up the road through the right-hander of turn 4.
They should investigate Yuki, because what he did to me was just stupid. Exit in turn 1.
It did no further investigation.
That's the way to shut him down, isn't it? Yeah, they actually did investigate it, mate. But yeah, I mean, I can see his point, because there was definitely contact, and it looked like Tsunoda was slightly out of control when he made that contact sliding across the racetrack. But let's have another look at Lando now. Coming down the main straight, he's closing on the Ferrari. Leclerc dives to the inside to protect a position, and that leaves Lando exposed on the outside. He runs deep into the corner, stamping on the brakes as hard as he can, and lock those up, sailing on off the track beyond the exit curve, and that's cost him some time. It'll give a little glimmer of hope to Lewis Hamilton in the other Ferrari behind, but he's still some way back. Lando Norris will fight, will live to have another go at that, I'm sure, with still another 10 laps to go.
Carlos Sainz has been told to box to retire the car, so a miserable day on the track. Will finish without even seeing a checkered flag for the Spanish racer in the Williams, who is back into the pits and ready to be rolled back into the garage. Our first retirement of the Grand Prix on lap 47 on 57. Oscar Piastri that 47 of 57, so 10 laps to go, and it's Oscar Piastri who still holds the lead, 4.3 seconds. George Russell, his nearest challenger, is in second. Charles Leclerc rounds out the podium for the time being, but Lando Norris is really piling on the pressure on the Monegasque. Just tried to move down into turn one, but went too deep, locked up his tyres and went off the track. He'll have to regain that ground and go again as we get in the closing stages of this race. It's going to be a fight to the flag from now. Leclerc third, Norris fourth, Hamilton rounds out the top five. Then it's Gasly in sixth, Verstappen seventh, with Esteban Ocon in eighth for Haas, ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, who is up to ninth. Ollie Behrman now inside the top 10. Kimi Antonelli is 11th because Jack Doohan has lost positions in the last few laps. He was up in the top 10. Doohan now outside of it in 12th. Albon 13th, Lawson is 14th, with Hulkenberg rounding out the top 15. Isaac Hadjar is 16th ahead of Fernando Alonso. Then comes Alonso's teammate Lance Stroll in 18th, Gabriel Bortoleto 19th, and now the last runner in this race, as we have just seen Carlos Sainz come into the pits to retire the car. Too much damage on the side pod of his Williams.
So interesting that now that temperatures have changed and the car balance has changed with the fuel burning away, it is seeming that they're all performing slightly differently on the different types of tyre. The hard tyre not looking as bad as it certainly looked on Max Verstappen's Red Bull earlier in the race, and the likes of Leclerc, the likes of Hamilton and Gasly all doing pretty reasonable lap times in comparison to Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, who are on the medium tyre, albeit with Verstappen's with a slight tyre offset of about 7 laps, having made the pit stop just before the safety car came out, not choosing to dive in when everyone else did. His tyre's now a little bit older, but we're not seeing that performance we expected.
Use the drink.
I would if it was working.
Okay, well, 10 laps to go, 10 laps.
Oscar Piastri being told to hydrate, and he would if he could. The drink system not working in the heat of the Bahrain desert. Thankfully, we are under the lights at night time. It's still hot out there, 26.8 degrees air temperature, track temperature 30.5 degrees.
He always comes across as a very calm individual, doesn't he, Piastri? He's still very young. He's very young within his career as well, and yet he still seems really unflustered. I don't think I've seen him too much in the way of being panicky or flustered. Even that, sort of making a half joke about it as he's on the radio leading the Grand Prix.
Yeah, McLaren team boss Andrea Stella came up with a really brilliant phrase to describe Piastri yesterday. He said, "There's no noise in Oscar's head," which I thought it was almost Dylan-esque in its perfection of description.
Well, and it's so far serving him well. He hasn't really had to fight too hard in this race. Pole position for Oscar Piastri, held his nerve down into turn one, and since then has kept the field within sight. He hasn't completely shot off into the distance, but he's got a 5.3 second gap ahead of George Russell. Black and white flag for Jack Doohan. That's his final warning for track limits. Didn't see what happened to Doohan. He was in the top 10 and has now lost points. But here we go again. Battle for third and the final spot on the podium. Charles Leclerc to the inside, the right-hander of turn one. That allows Lando Norris to try and get the undercut, but Leclerc positions the Ferrari in the middle of the track. Norris has to ease off the throttle slightly. Leclerc holds his nerve, moves to the middle of the track, hides the inside corners. We head uphill to the right-hander of turn four. Side by side, the Ferrari on the right, the McLaren on the left, and Norris almost forced off the track, has to bail out of it. That allows Leclerc to carry on through as the road narrows down towards turn 8. Leclerc holds on to third, but I think there may be trouble from that.
Well, you're about to hear Lando getting on the phone saying he was pushed off track, and you'll probably then hear Charles Leclerc saying he just took the racing line, he couldn't go any tighter, he was on the racing limit, and both of those statements could well be true. It was a very difficult one to pick apart, that, but I'm sure neither driver will be happy with the other accusing them, but we're going to hear about it very soon, I'm sure. As it stands though, Leclerc still ahead of Lando Norris.
We're about to get another look at it. It all teed up down into turn one. Leclerc defending the inside line, much tighter line. That does make you suffer, but he managed to put his car in the middle of the track, which really prevented Lando Norris from getting the undercuts. But then in the rundown towards turn four, slightly uphill, the right-hander, Leclerc once again defending the inside. Norris round the outside.
Yeah, that was very clear. He pushed you off.
I was all the way on the outside, like fully alongside on the apex. I was like wheels to wheel, front wheels to front wheels.
He was, and it did look like he was forced off the track, but if I'm honest, I want to see this move happen wheel to wheel. I don't want Leclerc to suddenly just have to give it up, because that's going to spoil us with some more epic racing.
Yeah, Lando's clearly got the quicker car right now, which we thought would be the case as the race comes towards its conclusion, but finding a way past is not proving quite as easy as we thought. Whether the stewards will actually get involved in that, I don't know. It was on the limit, I would say. Could go either way, but yeah, it'd be a shame to see that one decided in the stewards' room rather than on track. I suspect Lando has enough at some point to be able to get past Leclerc with, what, another 7 laps to go.
And George, there is a chance we lose the dash. Just keep driving as normal if that happens.
As long as the steering wheel doesn't fall off.
I think you'll be all right.
That's already happened this week to Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Mercedes and George Russell car clearly having a lot of technical problems, because for a long while Russell's transponder kept failing and completely not in this race at one point. The graphics on our screen having to reboot themselves, but Russell is still out there. He is still in second. He just might not have a screen to look at telling him what gear he's in and all the other numbers that come along with it. It's lap 50 of 57. Piastri leads Russell. Leclerc is still third ahead of Lando Norris, but this battle is not done yet. Hamilton further adrift, rounds out the top 5. Then it's Gasly in 6th ahead of Verstappen. Ocon having a good race in 8th. Tsunoda is 9th, with Ollie Behrman rounding out the points in 10th.
Yeah, so with Russell's car, I suspect as they go for this default switch position that's going to reset things to try and get his DRS system working correctly again, it may well be that it temporarily loses the dash, almost rebooting the system, if you like. Hopefully not permanently, because there's an awful lot of information on that screen that's really quite valuable to the drivers. But this battle between Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc still raging on. The point of it is it's going to be really hurting Lando's tyres more than it will be Charles Leclerc. The softer of the two is on the McLaren of Lando Norris. Oh, and Leclerc runs a little bit wide, which will give Lando Norris a little bit of extra hope as he closes right up underneath the rear wing.
Yeah, that was on the exit of turn 4 where Norris was ran wide by Leclerc the previous lap. What they've done there, of course, is there's gravel. There's a gravel strip so close to the white line. So where elsewhere on this track you've got tons of runoff and just really a bit of asphalt to deal with, there is gravel that will slow you down. Leclerc dipping a tyre into that, driving himself off the track through the left-hander of turn 10 onto the middle straight, where Lando Norris will get another dose of DRS. He's not close enough to try and find his way down the inside through the left-hand sweeper of turn 11 that takes you uphill. You arc to the left before flicking back to the right through the fastest corner on the circuit, turn 12. Then it quickly stiffens up off camber through the right-hander that leads you on to the back straight, and that Ferrari looking a little bit unstable as Leclerc tries to get it turned in. Norris losing ground coming out of the corner. 2 corners to go to see off this lap 51 before it becomes lap 52 of 57 into the closing stages of the Bahrain Grand Prix under the lights in the middle of the desert for round 4 of the 2025 Formula 1 Championship.
What's going on?
Blue default 10.
There's problems down at George Russell's Mercedes. Have his gears gone? We know he might lose his dash in terms of the technical screen, and Russell could be in trouble here. Leclerc also could be in trouble because Norris has had a great run out of turns 3 and 4 to the right-hander of turn 4. Norris round the outside struggles to get it turned in. Leclerc can't hold it either. Nearly loses the front end of his Ferrari, and that's all Norris needed to finally get through on the Ferrari. The McLaren man is up into third finally after laps of trying, and Leclerc falls down to 4th.
Yeah, and if that wasn't bad enough news for George Russell that Lando just got past Leclerc and is now hunting down the Mercedes, he's now been noted by race control for DRS infringement, the technical gremlins potentially causing a further penalty for the Mercedes.
So close to contact as well between the rear right of Norris and the front left of Charles Leclerc, and that deserves a round of applause from not only the McLaren garage but from the packed out grandstands here as well at the Bahrain International Circuit, all willing Lando Norris on. He is now up into 3rd spot. Lap 52 of 57, Oscar Piastri leads George Russell, but Mark Priestley, we've just seen a fantastic fight between Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris.
Yeah, and it's put Lando Norris up into the podium positions in P3. That battle's been raging for quite some time, but it's Lando that's got the better of it, now chasing down the Mercedes of George Russell.
There's also some issues for George Russell, potentially with technical problems on board his Mercedes. He's 9 seconds adrift of the leader, Oscar Piastri. Lap 53 of 57. It is Piastri who has the lead over George Russell's Mercedes. 9 seconds. Russell noted also for a DRS infringement as he's been complaining on the radio about losing his gears potentially. He's still out on the circuit though. Russell in second. Norris now in third. Onto the podium ahead of Charles Leclerc's Ferrari fourth. Hamilton the top 5. Then comes Gasly. Verstappen is 7th and looking to make a move on his old teammate. Ocon is 8th. Tsunoda 9th. Behrman 10th. Antonelli has fallen out of the points after 3 stops in this race. He's 11th ahead of Alex Albon. Liam Lawson's up to 13th. Doohan was running in the points. Lost ground, is now down to 14th ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. Hadjar and Alonso make up 16th and 17th with Lance Stroll and Gabriel Bortoleto, the last cars in this race. Carlos Sainz retiring due to damage on his Williams.
So Lando Norris has got a 10-second gap back from George Russell. That's George Russell in the Mercedes that's got all sorts of electrical gremlins going on right now. Can he close that down with 4 laps to go? My hunch is that he can. He's got a very fast McLaren. We know that Russell's battling all sorts of troubles.
Lando, we've had our 3rd strike track limits. Black and white flag. No more track limits.
Okay, well that's a very clear warning for Lando Norris, and it will play on his mind when he's pushing to hunt down George Russell. He's got to stay within the white lines at the edge of the circuit. It's so tempting to run wide when you're pushing hard. He cannot afford to do that anymore in this race.
3 strikes and you're out with the stewards, and you will have a time penalty coming your way. So Lando Norris may well be electing on the cautious side in these final few laps of the Bahrain Grand Prix, which so far I think we can call this a success, and one up on Japan last week, but it's been a flawless Grand Prix so far from Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, from pole position, leading every lap of this race apart from when he came into the pits. He's now got over 10 seconds ahead of George Russell. Lando Norris onto the podium now in 3rd, Leclerc 4th, Hamilton 5th, then comes Gasly and Verstappen.
So Russell will be investigated potentially for using DRS when he couldn't. So let's try and target 5 seconds clear.
I suspect with George Russell, the reason that the FIA have opted to investigate that after the race is because they know he's got technical problems, and the team will then argue. They talked about a timing issue for DRS, so I suspect what's happened is the DRS has been opening outside of the allowable zones, or for too long, or something like that. The team will then go and argue and say, look, it wasn't something that we're doing. Has Verstappen got a problem there? No. It wasn't something we were doing intentionally to gain an advantage. It was a technical gremlin getting in the way, and that will be their case for the defence.
This is the sound of Max Verstappen making his way through the right hand of turn 12, 6th gear, holds it, and then down shifts to 4th gear through the right hander, takes a bit of curve. He's looking at the back of the pink and black Alpine, who is Pierre Gasly in 6th spot. Good run for Pierre Gasly as it currently stands with another black and white flag. Final warning for Yuki Tsunoda. Track limits. Is currently on course to score his first points for Red Bull. If he can hold on to 9th spot, that will be 2 points. Meanwhile, up front, as Oscar Piastri makes more gains at the head of the field, 11.4 seconds split him and George Russell, who is now under huge pressure from Lando Norris. Can McLaren salvage a 1-2 here after Norris's travails throughout this Grand Prix? A penalty for being out of position in his pit box right at the start of this race, making gains under the safety car, battling and stuck behind Charles Leclerc for so many laps. He's now right under the rear wing of George Russell. So too is Max Verstappen as he tries to get Pierre Gasly out of turn 4. Has to slot in behind the Frenchman. That's over 6th and 7th. Norris is 3rd.
We can only use DRS when we're 100% sure we're within it.
That's an interesting call, because normally they get a beep in their ear and it's an automated system that clocks when they are within it. So clearly there's some sort of technical gremlin also happening to Norris and his DRS system.
Well, they all use the same electronic control boxes, and in places like Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, where the temperature's so high, you can get gremlins creeping in when electrical components do start to fail. So that's not an unknown problem. Maybe they're just particularly wary of what's happened on the Mercedes, and maybe they're starting to see signs signs of something similar happening on their own car. So a little extra warning for Lando Norris.
I wonder if it's the effect of Russell and his transponder and technical issues as well, not registering properly in the gap between himself and Lando Norris. Norris is using that DRS down the main straight, tucks up behind Russell, closes in under braking. There's a tyre disparity here as well. George Russell on the soft tyre, that will be wearing very thin now compared to Lando Norris's medium tyres, which won't be in great nick either, but slightly more preserved. DRS once more, uphill towards the right-hander of turn 4. Norris not lining it up there. He'll need to get a little closer, perhaps out of the left-hander of turn 9 and 10.
Yeah, and he's got just over, what, a lap and a half to do this, but he's got to be very careful not to overstep the mark in terms of track limits. He's had his final warning from the stewards, one more of those and it will result in a penalty. So he's got to do this in a lap and a half, but he's got to do it carefully and under control.
Through the double left-handers that squeeze you on the apex out of turn 10. Norris almost pushing Russell out of the corner. The silver arrow of George Russell as the floodlight glints off of that car, being chased as he looks in his mirrors by the papaya McLaren. Takes a lot more curb through the left-hander of 11 compared to George Russell. Uphill through the right-hander of turn 12. Loses a little bit of ground through the corners. Closes in under braking out of turn 13. Wanting good drive out of the back straight. Takes a bit of curb to boot. Up to 6th gear. Make that 7th as Max Verstappen becomes the next victim of track limits. Gets his final warning as well on the penultimate lap of this Grand Prix, which has been fascinating from start to finish. Oscar Piastri looks like he's got this one in the bag. He's 14 seconds up the road, but who will finish on the second rung of the podium? Right now it's George Russell, but he has to defend from Lando Norris side by side through turn 1. Russell doesn't give an inch. Norris has to bail out of it. Russell is not going to get this podium without a fight. Norris falls back, will get the aid of DRS once more through the right-hander of turn 4, but Russell well and truly using his elbows.
And that was wheel-to-wheel stuff. Very, very close to a collision. Both drivers got away with it. You might argue Lando maybe not aggressive enough through there, but at the moment he still sits in third.
It was the wrong move, the wrong calculation from Norris. He should have left it at turn 1 and got the run down to turn 4 on the DRS. By trying for turn 1 on the outside when not really being in the position, he left himself too far back for the run into turn 4, and now Russell's got one more straight to go.
And out of the exit of turn 10, the left-hander DRS beckons for Lando Norris, whilst his teammate is just a couple of corners away from taking victory under the lights in Bahrain. Has Norris run out of time? Has he run out of corners to try and make it a 1-2? A first time McLaren could get a 1-2 in Bahrain. McLaren, who have never been on pole position under the lights in the desert, who have never won a race in Bahrain. Oscar Piastri crosses the line and he will win the Bahrain Grand Prix in dominant style. But what about through the double right-handers? And George Russell will hold it out of the final corner to come home in second and split the McLarens. Lando Norris will have to settle for third, and Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton make it a Ferrari 4th and 5th place. And still battles going all the way through the field. Can Max Verstappen try and find his way up one more spot and recover 6th place from Pierre Gasly? It's going to be tight to the line, and he might well have just done it on the line. Verstappen peeking through on Pierre Gasly and gets himself up to 6th. Gasly down to 7th. Ocon crosses the line 8th. Yuki Tsunoda gets his first points for Red Bull in 9th. Oscar Piastri with a dominant display takes the victory here ahead of George Russell and the Mercedes, who just about held on for a fast-charging Lando Norris, who still holds the lead of this championship but finished in third. After 57 laps of racing, it's Piastri who wins the Bahrain Grand Prix.
So man, it's going to be one hell of a party tonight.
Well done, mate. Well done. That's the first time we've won our second home Grand Prix. You've been pretty flawless all weekend, so great job.
Yeah, mega weekend, everyone. Mega. That was pretty damn fun, so thanks everyone for the car. Pretty special to do it here in Bahrain, so thanks to everyone that supports us out here. It's a busy weekend, and yeah, thanks for all your support. It's been a long road to get here.
Perfect Piastri in Bahrain takes the win for McLaren. George Russell second, Lando Norris having to settle for third. Leclerc, Hamilton the top five. Verstappen gets sixth ahead of Gasly. Ocon, good points for Haas in eighth. Tsunoda points in ninth, and Ollie Behrman makes it a double points finish for Haas in 10th. Pipping Antonelli will be disappointed to fall out of the points in 11th. Albon, Doohan, Hulkenberg and Hadjar the top 15, with Alonso, Lawson, Stroll and Portoletto making up the remaining 19 finishes. Just the one retirement from Carlos Sainz in the Williams, and what that does to the championship. Lando Norris continues to lead, 77 points to his name, but Piastri hops up into second and is not far behind with 74 points to his name. Verstappen now down to third, George Russell fourth, and Charles Leclerc rounds out the top five in the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good drive from George Russell. He had all sorts of technical gremlins going on inside the cockpit. He had arguably the wrong tyres on the car for the final stint of the Grand Prix, and still he managed to hold off under extreme pressure from Lando Norris. So whilst it was a great race from Oscar Piastri, I think also big credit to George Russell in the Mercedes.
You can hear the round of applause as Oscar Piastri pulls into Parc Fermé. Of course, McLaren, the majority ownership coming from a Bahrain financial firm, so this will mean a lot to them. There will be a party tonight for sure for the Papaya team, as Piastri just struggling to get his belts loose, as he then does lift himself out of the car. And what a result for Oscar Piastri, who becomes well, our first repeat winner of the season. And will this be a race that will be long in the memory for Oscar Piastri, as he now gets back on track with his championship challenge? I know we're only on round 4, but after losing crucial points in his home race in round 1, only coming away with a couple to his name while teammate Lando Norris took the spoils and the full 25 for the win, Piastri has today showcased that he may well be less experienced than his teammate Lando Norris, but that should not rule him out for a championship charge.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it was a really crucial win, I think, this one, not just for the points that it obviously brings with it, but I think the status within the team, the fact that he's not going to sit there and be outperformed by Lando Norris, outshone behind Lando Norris. He wants to make his case for being a championship contender, and today was a really good way to do that.
Peeling into second, George Russell continues his stellar start to the season for Mercedes. Third place in Australia, followed that up with another third place in China, off the podium in Japan. But now, I think coming into this weekend, if you'd said, George Russell, you're going to split the McLarens coming into this race, he wouldn't have believed you.
We didn't think anyone could possibly split the McLarens this weekend, and actually, you know, if you look at the pace of the cars, he shouldn't have done, and that's what I'm saying. His performance today, I think, outperformed the car, and it was his driving grit and determination that really held Lando off under extreme pressure, and with all that trouble he had going on in the cockpit, with the engineers talking about gremlins and setting default positions on the steering wheel and all sorts of troubles, he still managed to get the car home in second. Really good job.
And Lando Norris, as George Russell gets out of the car and celebrates almost like he won the race. How will Lando Norris feel and reflect on that Grand Prix?
Well, given where he started, on the face of it, you say that's a decent result. He's clawed back, and damage limitation, he did a really good job in that front, but he had a car capable of finishing first or second today, and he hasn't done that. And so when you pick apart the races in fine detail, like Formula One teams and drivers always do, he will be disappointed with that. His teammate has taken a massive advantage out of him today. So we know what Lando's like. He'll beat himself up about this as well. He'll criticise his own performance, and he will have to look long and hard at that, because ultimately it was driving errors largely that cost him this weekend.
George Russell heads to be weighed and then joins the conversing McLaren drivers of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. A wry smile on both of their faces, and I think a little bit of a laugh over those final battles between Norris and Russell. I think Norris would have preferred a little more space given at times, but that presented some rather great racing for us to watch, as the former head honcho at Ferrari, Luca de Montezemolo, who waved the checkered flag, coming over to congratulate the two McLaren drivers as well, having been at the helm of the Ferrari team for many years. Good results as well, though, for Pierre Gasly. 7th place for him, his first points of the season. And Esteban Ocon in 8th as well. We'll come to them, but let's first hear from our top 3, talking to Karun Chandok.
Oscar Piastri, congratulations, your 50th Grand Prix victory tonight. What a way to celebrate.
50th victory?
Well, 50th start.
I hope it's my 50th victory. No, great to have this result out here. It's been an incredible weekend. Started off with qualifying yesterday, and yeah, to finish the job today in style was nice. So yeah, I can't thank the team enough for the car they've given us. It's pretty handy out there. So no, it's been a great weekend, and yeah, very proud of what I've done this weekend as well. So very proud to do it here in Bahrain as well. It's obviously a very important race for us, given our owners, and it's never been a track that's been kind to us. So it's nice to finally have that first win for the team here.
Well, you're absolutely right. McLaren have only led 8 laps here at the Bahrain circuit. An amazing achievement. Just talk to me about the race itself. Was it stressful around the safety car? Because you built up that gap of 7.2 seconds. What did you think when the safety car came out?
I would have preferred to not have it, yes, but I was still pretty confident. I think the pace was good. I was pretty confident I could get a good restart. I also knew that Lando and I were the only ones with another medium, and that was the tyre to be on. So from that side of things, it was relatively straightforward. Obviously, you try and get a good restart, and you never quite know how it's going to go. But no, I was never going to let that one go.
We saw that the city was turned papaya when they won the Constructors' World Championship last night. How are you guys going to celebrate this first home win for Bahrain and for McLaren here?
I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be a hell of a party. I'm not going to get involved because I've got a race again next week. But no, it's been a great weekend for everybody, and yeah, it's a great place to do it. So I'm sure everybody will enjoy it, and as they should.
Fastest lap, pole position, race victory. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
George Russell, congratulations on 2nd place. Bit stressful at the end there?
Yeah, it was. Felt all under control for a moment, and then suddenly we had a brake-by-wire failure. So suddenly the pedal was going long, and then it was going short, and I didn't know what was going on. The steering wheel wasn't working properly, so it was really hard fought to keep Lando behind. I think one more lap he would have got me pretty comfortably, but nevertheless, really, really pleased with P2.
And we saw you have a lunge around the outside of Oscar, a bit of a lock-up in that early part. And after that, was it a case of just trying to protect 2nd place?
I mean, Oscar was in a league of his own, so congratulations to him and to McLaren. We knew there'd be pretty extraordinary around this circuit, and that was proven right. But for ourselves, you know, it's been 4 races, 3 podiums, all on different types of tracks. So it gives us confidence going into the future.
We heard you say that the last stint, 25 laps on a set of softs, is going to be audacious.
Yeah.
You made it work.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how, to be honest. When I saw, you know, Charles behind me on the hards, and I saw there was 24 laps to go, I thought, you know, geez, how the hell are we going to make this work? But we did. The team did a great job, and it's been a great weekend.
And we know you had some systems issues towards the end, DRS issues as well. Any concerns about that? Because I think there was a point where you're being looked at for using the DRS outside the zone. Or...
Yeah, we basically was having all sorts of failures, and basically we had to do an override on the DRS. And on one lap, I clicked the radio button and the DRS opened. So straight away closed it again, backed off, nothing gained. I lost more than I gained. It was only open for a split second. So kind of goes to show the amount of issues we were having, but as I said, we're really pleased with P2.
Congratulations. Well
Thank
done,
you so
George.
much. Thank you.
Lando, a bit of a roller coaster there. Let's try and remember the start first. What happened there? We saw you creep forward in the grid box. Can you tell us what happened there?
I didn't think I was that far forward, I guess. Nothing more than that. So a tough race, of course. I made too many mistakes with the overtakes. The out of position was a messy race for me, and disappointed not to bring home a 1-2 for McLaren, because that would have been lovely at home. So a tough one, but still a few positives.
We saw on the restart a great battle between you and the 2 Ferraris. Were you aware that you'd gone off and you had to give that place back to Lewis at that point?
No, I just got told. So
this was the last one where you were okay.
It was close. I mean, it was good racing throughout, so no complaints. Just good fun. I mean, good overtakes, everyone hard and on the limit as it should be. So a good one.
And good fair racing with George there right at the end, someone you know and have raced together for a very long time.
No, he did a good job. So I thought I'd be able to get him. I guess he was probably just saving a little bit for the end, which he did well. So he did a good job. Oscar did a good job. So congrats to Oscar and the whole McLaren team. And I'll try to step it up for next weekend.
A 1-3 for McLaren in the second home race. Congratulations.
Cheers, man. Thank you so much.
Corinne Chandok speaking to our top three. At the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri wins ahead of George Russell and Lando Norris. And with that, Lando Norris still leads the championship, 77 points to his name, but Oscar Piastri just 3 behind now with 74. McLaren with a grip on this title in the early stages. We'll be back in action next weekend in Saudi Arabia to finish off the first triple header of the season. But that just about does it for our coverage from Bahrain. My thanks to Andrew Benson and Mark Priestley. We will be analysing all of what we've just seen on our Checkered Flag podcast, which will drop on your feeds later on this evening on BBC Sounds and wherever you get your podcasts. But in the meantime, we'll hand you over here on 5 Sports Extra to Kevin Howes and the team for live ball-by-ball cricket commentary from the County Championship. Afternoon.